Okay, so this is learning objective 3 and explains when companies use the relative sales value method to value inventories. So we're talking about the relative sales value method. And a special problem arises when companies buy a group of varying units in a single lump sum purchase, otherwise known as a basket purchase. So for example, assume that Woodland Developers purchases land for $1 million that it will divide into 400 lots. These lots are of different sizes and shapes, but can be roughly sorted into 3 groups, A, B, and C. As Woodland sells lots, it allocates or apportions the purchase cost of $1 million among the lots sold and lots remaining on hand. Why would Woodland simply divide the total cost of $1 million by 400 lots to get $2,500 for each lot? Well, it really neglects to understand the shape, the attractiveness, size of the actual lots. So that's why we use a relative sales price apportionment to figure out the actual cost. To remedy this situation, the best practice is to allocate this total among the various units on the basis of their relative sales price. So here's kind of a model example of the forthcoming homework problems kind of represent. So this is going to be total lots. This is price per lot, and this is total selling price. So I take my lots, multiply it by the selling price per lot, and I get my total selling price. Now my relative selling price is going to be dividing each one of these divided by the total cost. And now I take the total cost, I take the relative price. This is by the relative selling price. So by the relative selling price, I take the relative selling price ratio and I multiply it by the cost. And those are 1,000. So I'm portioning that total cost of a million, and I get the cost. I get the cost per units, or the allocated cost per units. Now we take that another step further, and we take the cost allocated, and we divide it by the quantity of lots, and I get my cost per unit lots. So now that carries over here where I have the number of lots sold, and over here I carry over that cost per unit. And if I had the number of lots sold multiplied by the cost per unit, I get the cost of basically the cost of goods sold. And that's the cost of goods sold. Now I add the sales price. So I take, or the sales that actually occurred. So how do you get to gross profit? You take the revenue minus the cost, and you get our gross profit. What's interesting is you can also take a ratio of the cost of goods sold divided by the total divided by the total gross profit. And you can multiply that by the total sales to get the cost of goods sold. So you can take that ratio and multiply it by, if you're given that ratio, you can multiply it by the sales to get the cost of goods sold. The ratio of the cost to sales for all these lots is 1 million divided by 2.5. Or you have the same ratio already established, I should say. The 1 million, the 2.5 is already established to get the 40%. So then you can take the sales price of the lots and you can multiply it and get the 680,000. So keep that in mind. Finally, the inventory of the lots on hand is then 1 million less. So if I want to check how many lots I have on hand, I take the 1 million, I subtract out the cost of goods sold, obviously, and I find out the value of it is 320,000. So the practice examples are very similar. Again, you have the number of CDs, for example. We have this grouped over here. And we take the number of CDs, the price per CD. We multiply these to get the sales price, see the relative amount, we divide by the total, and to get the total costs, so I have the relative sales price and I have the total cost, I multiply these, and then I get the allocated cost. I divide the allocated cost by the number of CDs to get the price per unit, or cost per unit, excuse me, not the price, the cost per unit. And really the juncture, the transition is where you multiply the total cost, which is given to us, by the relative sales price, and you get our allocation, and then we get the cost per CD. And these will roll over to our next calculation if we were going to go ahead, for example, and calculate cost of goods sold. So if we were going to go calculate cost of goods sold, that would roll over here, and I multiply by the cost of the units sold, and then we can get our cost of goods sold. Subtract from the revenue, and then we get our gross profit. These are going to be sales revenues given to us. And the same example over here, I have my number of lots, the price per lot. So I'm multiplying a total sales price, do a ratio. And what do I do with this ratio? How would I apply this ratio? You multiply the ratio by the cost of the group. You multiply the ratio by the cost of the group, which is given to us, and we get our cost per lots. So the cost of the group is given to us, and it's different because this is already kind of broken up. It's not consistently portrayed, but we still get our cost per lot by taking this number and dividing it by the number of lots. Now I have how many are sold, and the value of that amount. So how do I do that? I take the number of lots, multiply by the cost per lot to get the cost, the amount, to get the cost per goods sold. It's because I have the number of lots, and multiply this by just the price per lot, just to get the value sold. And here we have the ending inventory. It's a little bit different. We're looking at mainly units on hand. So we take the number of lots, again multiply by the cost per lot now to get the actual ending inventory. And 7 times the cost per lot. Remember, ending inventory in general is connected and tied to cost of goods sold, obviously. The journal entries go together. So we're going to multiply this by the costing per lots to get our ending inventory. Similar to what we did up here when we tried to solve for the costs sold, cost per goods sold. Multiply by the selling price, by the cost per unit, we have our cost of goods sold, very similar to that. And you can find the gross profit by taking the total sales, which we have over here, similar to what we did before. Now the cost of the land, we have what we have over here. We have the cost of the ending inventory. So we're kind of working backwards here, unlike the other example. We're taking the cost of the group minus the ending inventory, and then we get our cost of the land sold. We take our sales minus the cost of goods sold. We get a gross margin, and then we take out the operating expenses. That would have to be given to us. And then we get our net income. So another example that is really parallel to others. So I have a number of chairs again times the selling price, total value. I do an apportionment. A relative sales value, what do I multiply that by? The total cost, which I'm given. This time it's consistent, get a cost allocated, After I multiply that, you get our cost allocated, and cost per lot, you divide it by the number of chairs, we get our cost per lots. And now the calculation of gross profit again, the number of shares sold, similar to that example we just did. Then we take that and we take the selling price. So what's the selling price again? That's going to be what we just solved for. And then we get our total sales value. No, I'm sorry. If we take our number of chairs times the selling price, we get a total sales value. That's not what we solve for. We solve for the cost of the lot sold. So then we take our cost of lots sold and multiply by the selling price, and now we get our total cost of goods sold. And then we can take our gross profits by subtracting the cost of goods sold again. And you take your sales minus the cost of goods sold, and then you get your gross profit. And so we have our total cost of sold. These are total cost sold. So then to find those not sold, we go back to our prior table, and we look at the total cost allocated, and we subtract them. And there you have it right there, calculation of unsold inventory. And that's it for learning objective 3. Thank you.